The season of the Malignant launches in less than 24 hours, and we just got a massive balance patch that has completely shaken up the meta. So in this video, I'll be giving you a handful of starter builds for the new season. These builds are designed specifically in mind to get you to World Tier 3, and should you want to continue them, you can easily push these builds to the end game. Down in the description, there will be a link to all these builds, and with that said, let's begin. Starting this thing off strong, let's talk about my Thorns Barbrian build. Now, I've played this build in the server slam, the early alpha days, pretty much every instance of Diablo 4 thus far, and this build has carried me through the entire game. Now, this is a barbarian build, and the class is generally slow to start, but once you get a few skills going, the build starts to take off. Unlike most builds in this game, the build isn't designed around a specific skill, but around a mechanic called Thorns. When an opponent hits you, no matter how much damage is taken, the enemy will receive a certain amount of Thorns damage back to them, and because of this design, you can build heavily into defense and get a lot of damage out of your defenses. On top of that, while all classes were universally nerfed, this build actually didn't receive as big of a nerf as the build isn't built with a specific core skill in mind. You can build basically anything you want, and also it isn't a crit based build, so it's actually escaped all the crit nerfs as well. With all that in mind, this build was actually buff. We used steel grasps, and the change gave it more Vaughn uptime. Defense also did take a big hit, but this build is actually very defensive, and in a lot of cases you tend to overkill on defense, so even with the nerf, your defense is second to none. You can expect to do just short of every bit of content with this build should you take it to the end game. So because of that, my Thorns Barbrian is a strong starter, and I highly recommend it. Up next, we have the Sorcerer, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Sorcerer is arguably in the worst spot of all classes, but does have a really good start. The patch did bring about a lot of nerfs and very few buffs, and what the Sorcerer suffers from was actually made worse with the defensive nerfs. Fortunately, I was able to reach out to Ben from Bentley Gaming, and he was able to give me a bit of insight on a starter build for the Sorcerer for the Malignant League. Check it out.
Next up is Shard Sorcerer. This build has very good sustain, really good CC, and actually good damage. Also, really good clear speed as your ice shards bounce off and hit other enemies, and when you freeze them, your enchantment also just automatically fires out, making clearing out a group of enemies really quite easy. For the build, simply follow this leveling path. We do also have the chance to completely outright freeze an enemy with one hit, and also a chance to reset the cooldowns of our defensive skills.
Huge shout out to Ben for the help with this one. Again, down in the description there will be a link to his channel as well as this video that gives you a second set of builds for the season, so go check it out. Hopefully the Sorcerer gets some much needed love in the upcoming patch, but let's move on. Up next, we have arguably the biggest winner of the nerf patch, the Necromancer. First off, I gotta say, I just adore the BloodSurge skill. It is, in my opinion, the best looking skill in the game, and I put together a pretty cool BloodSurge Necromancer build that destroys the leveling phase, and fortunately, the build actually got a lot of buffs. First off, Enhanced BloodSurge got its healing buff, giving the skill a bit more healing. On top of this, the blood bathe aspect that makes your skill do an additional echo got the damage reduction reduced, giving you more overall damage. And finally, the Drain Vitality Lucky Hit chance got a buff as well. This gives you the ability to fortify while casting blood skills while healthy, basically giving the Necromancer a lot more survivability. So with all this combined, and the fact that the build scales really well into the end game, can easily swap to a Bloodlance build, seeing that it basically uses the same setup and can easily change to a Bone Spear or any build of your choosing due to the fact that it has really good AoE clear. It's a no-brainer. I'm recommending the BloodSurge Necromancer for the season of the Malignant. Up next, let's talk about the Druid, and if I'm being 100% honest, before the launch of Diablo 4, I thought the Druid would be the by far worst class in the game. Fast forward to the launch of Season 1, and boy could I have not been more wrong. While the early game can be a bit of a slow start, the Druid has one of the best ramp ups as they push into the end game. Unfortunately, I was only able to get the Druid to about level 66 in the preseason, as I really didn't have a lot of time to play the class. But fortunately, Augie Sane over at his channel put together a Slam Slide Druid leveling guide, as well as updated his build over on Mobalytics, and here's what he has to say about the Slam Slide Druid.
Hey guys, Augie Sane here and welcome to the channel. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I want to share with you guys my Earth Leveling Druid build guide. I like to call it the Slam Slide build. If you do manage to get some of the aspects right, there's two of them that really make it start popping off. I unfortunately did not get them, but it still did really good, and I never felt underpowered on my Druid or slow to start out. So that's really good as like a good leveling build and starting you out and getting you into the late game so you can farm up whatever it is you're looking for. If you're looking for that Shred Druid or the Tornado Druid or whatever you're after, this will help you get to that point and farm you up some loot.
Just keep in mind, Augie Saint has already updated the leveling guide over on Mobalytics, and we'll have a link down in the description alongside this video. Huge thank you to Augie Saint for the Slam Slide Druid. Head on over to his channel and show him some love. And finally, let's move on to the final class. You know, I love saving the best for last, and I've always viewed the Rogue as basically the best class in the game. It offers by far the most build diversity and viability of all the classes in the game. It has a speedy, fast early game, a strong mid game, and can absolutely dumpster every bit of the content offered in Diablo 4. Coming the Malignant season, I will be starting as a rogue, and I've been using a pretty good build from the Comeback Kid for the past week, and honestly, it feels really good for leveling. Now, I would be lying to you if I told you I was concerned about how well the build would perform, as the Rogue is a pretty amazing class. But I did reach out to Sky from the Comeback Kids to see what his thoughts were about the Rogue after the huge nerf patch. Here's what Sky had to say about the Twisting Blades build.
Hey, the Saga. Yeah, man, I would highly recommend the Twisting Blades Rogue build for Season 1. This build is by far the best out of all Rogue builds for leveling and even progressing through Nightmare Dungeons as of right now. It's incredibly mobile, flashy, and just overall super fun to play, and even after all the nerfs to the classes, Twisting Blades Rogue is absolutely pumping Uber Lilith at an insane rate to prove it's still on top.
Huge shout out to Sky and Lance over at the Comeback Kids for the insight on the build. Links down in the description. I'm sure these guys are hard at work for the launch of Season 1, and I'm pretty excited to jump in as well. There you have it, guys. That is 5 starter builds for Season of the Malignant. Once again, huge shout out to everyone in this video. You guys' perspective on each class really helped out a lot. Of course, links to all their Mobalytics builds as well as channel down in the description. I'm pretty excited to jump in and see what the next season in Diablo 4 has to offer. The Malignant Hearts look like they can actually bring some interesting build combos, so I'm pretty sure there's a lot to explore there. Keep in mind, I will be live streaming Season 1 of Diablo 4 here on the YouTube, so stay tuned. And don't forget to like as well as subscribe to the channel. My name's the Saga, and thank you for watching. Later.